Hey, everybody. Welcome to Making Pivotal Change, the podcast about companies that have been able to identify and execute pivots in their business successfully, trying to get to the heart of what drove those decisions and what enabled them to make those kinds of changes. So today, my guest is Carter Wilcoxson, and Carter is the founder and CEO of CSI Financial Group. And CSI, I'll see if I get this right, Carter, you partner with financial advisors to provide the resources necessary for them to effectively attract and then have the services and capabilities to retain clients. So helping the advisors be more successful in their own businesses. Did I get that pretty right?
You hit the nail pretty much on the proverbial head there, yes.
Terrific. You want to tell us anything more about CSI?
Well, I guess I can start off with saying that I've been in what we call the independent distribution space for going on 2 decades now. And I spent a fair amount of time on a lot of the things that ended up ultimately happening on maybe some of the pivot that we can talk about here in a little bit. But, I had an opportunity to not only be in the space I'm in now, but in between this company that I founded 6 years ago now in July, and before where I got my foundational training and learning in the same space, I spent a little window in there as an actual retail advisor. So it gave me an opening or an enlightenment, if you will, a preview of what was the challenges traditionally for advisors in this space on them growing their practice. So having some empathy for and understanding on what it is that they go through on a regular basis really helped me shape the idea and the foundation as we continue growing CSI Financial Group. So, just a quick little overview for you there.
That's perfect. That's great. As a matter of fact, from my own experience, I've run a business without EOS and with EOS, and part of what enabled me, I think, to be able to make this leap was exactly that kind of. I have experience in both worlds, and I understand the difference that it makes and how to implement it. So I relate to that tremendously. So, from the perspective of your business, was there a particular pivot point or a time where everything was going great, or it seemed to be going great, or you've hit a roadblock or ceiling, and you just decided, we need to think about something a little bit differently here?
Well, I would love to say that, there was this epiphany that happened, but because of my experience where I came from and because I sort of started CSI Financial Group feeling like I could recreate an industry, the pivot really was foundational, if you will.
That's great. Yeah. So your business as a whole was a pivot, basically, for the industry.
Yeah, it really was. And again, because of what I alluded to in the beginning, is this exposure to what it was that I first started talking to these advisors. I consider myself an advisor to advisors. And when I became one of them, and then I saw, well, no wonder they have this challenge of, I use this terminology all the time. Product is not the unmet need in this industry. So I knew that I couldn't start CSI Financial Group and just try to be exactly what everybody else was. Number one, it's super competitive. And number two, I wasn't going to be able to differentiate myself and my offering if I was just like everybody else. So the pivot was, I can't be them. I have to be something different. But the main pivot, as I was trying to stay afloat, just get keep the lights on, if you will, as an entrepreneur, and starting the company out, from the garage, cell phone, computer, dogs barking in the background, things like that, and then ultimately, you get an office, and then one thing turns into another as you continue to refine your practices and everything. But we still had to have revenue coming in. So I sort of started it with the idea that I had to leverage my previous relationships that I had formed prior to starting CSI Financial Group, because I had that window about 3 years, and then they really liked working with me. I'm a relationship builder in the first place. That's the key to anybody's success as far as I'm concerned. But in my mind, I knew that we had to reach a point where we would pivot to something that was going to be the thing. That pivot happened whenever I got introduced to my business partner, Gary Lofsgaard, who has been in the estate planning arena for 35 years. the question, once I learned about his digital transformation software, the transition and the question that I asked early on was, Gary, are you sure nobody else is using this software in my industry? Because I was looking for the thing. I was looking for the pivot until I could start going a specific direction to become foundational for the idea of the foundation of recreating. But I, in the beginning, like I said, I had to still keep the revenue coming in. So it's sort of over here, we got to keep the everything moving forward. But over here, we've got to find something that differentiates us. That pivot happened again whenever I met Gary, and he goes, well, there's been a few people who've, they threatened to take this and run with it and make it be a foundational approach to their platform or their sales systems or whatever the case may be. But now really we've had no success with it. And I go, okay, well, I want exclusivity because I think I can take this thing and I can run with it, which now 3+ years later, it is our foundational approach. It is very much process driven, process oriented. And I set out on this journey ultimately to do 3 things better than anybody else. Number 1, elevate the client experience. Now, because I've been in the field and I know what that means to an advisor, if I can help them elevate their client's experience, now my clients are obviously independent financial advisors, but elevate the client experience, their client experience. Number 2, that ultimately creates what I call professional contrast. And if I can help you differentiate yourself, then that's going to ultimately lead by following the process that we have in place. Number 3, the key component, which is to competitor proof your ideal clients. So it's one thing to get the client acquisition model in place, which we've done. That's the traditional challenge really for anybody, but in my space, it really is because it's super competitive. And then if you can ultimately have this process that elevates the client experience, you are creating this professional contrast, especially in the end user's eyes through that experience. And then you competitor proof them because of that experience. Well, that's the makings of a very successful model. And that's exactly what we set out to do and what we continue to do. We refine it every chance we get, but that it really is the ultimate goal and objective.
Well, it's amazing actually, because very few businesses have really thought through their 3 uniques to that degree. And it's one of the core principles of what I do is work with clients on that. You've got those nailed. And to be able to do that and just decide where you want to go, Southwest Airlines is my favorite example. They had 3 uniques when they started: lots of flights, lots of low fares, and lots of fun. In isolation, none of them seemed necessarily that unique or exciting, but when you put it together, it was really united. And if you are Southwest, and they've pushed the barriers of that over time. So they don't just stand on their laurels, they continue to get there. And that's one of the things I heard you say is you discovered this platform through your business partner, and you've really been able to take that to define those 3 uniques and then continue to expand the value you deliver under those. It's really, really well done.
Well, and then if I take it one step further for you, what those 3 things do for the advisor is it's about client acquisition, client retention, and generational control if done completely properly. So, and again, that has everything to do with the process. It has nothing to do with the shiniest, latest, product offering that's out there. It has nothing to do with your annuity or your life insurance or your AUM or your tax strategy or whatever. Those are just parts of, the solutions that you provide for the client. But it has to be a process that clients go through that, number 1, they've never really had before. And then you have to find a team of people that you can be around you that have the capabilities of being inserted into these, what we call this multidisciplinary team approach that ultimately takes these clients through this process. And then again, it really does solve those 3 things, later down the road for those advisors, because if you're just transactional, ultimately, you can always be outpriced, right? On whatever, that might be. So that's why you have to have a process that clients can really buy into They're not buying from you, they're buying into your process. And we help our advisors develop this process. We have uniform messaging that we deliver to them. I mean, heck, we even go as far as these websites that we create for them that make them overnight look bigger than they are. So it really is all about process and perception. But yeah, products, pricing, and performance, that you can't hold your, put your hat on that.
So I have so many different places I want to go, but I want to start with process. So a lot of people look at process as something that's rigidly keeping you from making pivots. But what I'm hearing from you is processes is the heart of what has enabled you to make those pivots.
Bingo. It's exactly what it is. It's we are process driven, process oriented first and foremost. And again, I tell every single one of my advisors a couple of things. Number one, careful what you wish for, because if you follow this process the exact way that you're supposed to, these clients are yours in perpetuity. So you might want to make sure that they're the ideal clients that you want to work with. And then also, as I just mentioned, product is not the unmet need. So that's the low bar. That's the low expectation. And if that's what you're going to just hang your hat on, you can't just do that. With that being said, I tell them, if anybody understands a transaction has to occur to monetize a relationship, it's me. I understand that. But you have to become transformational if you're ultimately going to be a comprehensive, well-established, and with opportunities to be introduced to others. See, if they follow our process, what ends up ultimately happening is that these ideal clients that they get through what we call stranger marketing initiatives, that ultimately leads to introductions to like-minded clients, which really can monetize that relationship even that much more. It can 10x, 20x that possibility without any more extra marketing dollars to have to be spent.
Right. Well, I particularly love your focus, and you mentioned it here, but I also saw it when I went to your website and I watched some of your videos around the concept of generational relationships and building something with an eye toward being so innately valuable to your clients that their heirs become your clients too. And I really love that. Tell me a little bit more about that and about your estate capabilities, which I found really intriguing. Even the name, having been through obviously that process myself, there is no such thing as estate planning on a basic level. Everything is state specific. The laws are all different and things like that. So that was very intriguing to me. I'd love to hear more about it.
Well, I mean, I could talk about that all day long. The interesting thing is that I built this strategic partnership with my, business partner, Gary Lofsgaard, who is the developer, with this programmer of what he used to call the dynamic trust portfolio. But as we started, moving together in this same symbiotic way, and we were trying to ultimately make sure that the client, because he cares about the client experience also, because estate planning can be cumbersome, it can be painful, it can be, I'm
usually
probably,
it is, honestly.
I'm preaching to the choir there. But when we kept going along this way, and he realized about 9 years ago, way before I ever knew him, that paper was going by way of the dodo bird, he went to his programmer and he said, okay, here are the things we need to do. We need to leverage technology. We need to embrace digital transformation. Can we do this? And the programmer goes, yeah, we can do that. And then he goes, well, can we do this? Yeah, we can do that. And the programmer, every time Gary would ask him if you could do this, the programmer would say, well, yeah, we can do this, which ultimately led to this conversation we have all the time. He goes, Carter, the only thing that makes a difference, or the question can always be answered this way: time and money. Yeah. We can do everything. It's just time and money. So anyway, he had embraced that. That's why when I realized that we had the capabilities of helping end user clients all over the country, leveraging legal protocols, and you're right. But what a lot of people don't know is that you can do what's called jurisdictional shopping. So your trust can actually be what's called situs in the most pro-trust friendly state in the union. It doesn't have to be where you live.
So not only does your platform help me get the best estate planning in the state that I want to do it in, it also helps me find the best state to accomplish the goals that I have. That's interesting. I've never heard of that before.
Well, and see, we're in what's called the knowledge for profit business. And this knowledge that I've learned, I've basically gone to law school for the last 3 years. When I discovered all of these things, I was like, holy cow, this is unbelievable. So jurisdictional shopping choice of law is what it's called. And then the other thing is that we developed this this terminology called the estate plan because everything's electronic. So I called Gary up one day and I said, hey, I know that you call your trust portfolio the dynamic trust portfolio. And of course, we use that terminology portfolio because it makes up so many things that it's encompassing. I said, well, how about this as an idea? How about if we call it the estate plan portfolio instead? Because with the end in mind that everything's electronic signatures, why don't we call it that? And he was like, sounds great. When I took that to some of my internal people here, their jaws just dropped like, why didn't I think of that? That's brilliant. I'm not trying to break my arm to pat myself on the back, but it just, for me, it just like, duh.
Those are the best ideas. The ones that when everybody sees them, the first reaction is that's so incredibly simple. I should have thought of that, but no one did, right?
Yeah, exactly. So to that end, the estate plan portfolio and the painfulness traditionally, if you go the traditional route, which you still can, we have this proprietary process that we call our 90 and 90 formula. And why we call it that is because we can get 90% of your estate plan done. Once you decide, yes, let's do this, we can get 90% of your estate plan done in 90 minutes or less. From wherever you are in the country, from the comfort and safety of your own home, if that's what you want to do, you can virtually do it anywhere. So our advisors, so we work with, through the advisor network, they work with the end user clients, and we onboard clients consistently all over the country on a regular basis. It could be from California today, it could be from Florida tomorrow, and everything in between. But then a lot of times people will ask me the question, or clients will ask the question, well, what about the other 10%? So that's actually the magic is in that story. The other 10% is that one thing that everybody, we usually say in this room because we give these educational events live, but if it's virtual, but the other 10% is that one thing that everybody in this room, you and I, by the way, are going to have to deal with for the rest of our lives, called change. And the beauty of the platform and the system is that when those changes occur, not if, but when those changes occur, right? You buy something, you sell something, you move, whatever the case may be, laws change. In real time, with your subscription-based model, it's $95 a year to be able to have full unencumbered access to the entire team that helped facilitate it in the first place, 24/7, 365. We can make those changes and edits and modifications in real time for the rest of your life. So that's why we call it the 90-90 formula, because the other 10% is going to be happening for the rest of your life. I can't.
But what if you enjoy spending thousands of dollars for a law firm to do that kind of stuff?
We're not your cup of tea then.
So, you're started your business, you've got a plan, you've got to drive revenue while you build a business, and all of a sudden, somehow you and Gary get connected, you see the potential of this, and you decide, okay, I'm going to build my business in part based on this particular capability as a foundational element. To me, that is a pretty awesome pivot, right? So how did you take that and say, well, I'll ask two questions. Your business as a whole from the very start was a pivot for the industry, which is hard. You've got to change behaviors. You've got to change expectations. You've got to drive a different set of criteria for the people who are going to purchase the product that don't know those capabilities are there. And then you get eState involved and you get in that as a platform as well. How did you make those kinds of changes to the mentality of your clients, but also to, as you built a team and continue to grow?
Well, so I, on my website, if you saw, I consider myself the architect of the advisor partner platform. The advisor partner platform makes up 4 pillars to success. Number 1, it's the training. Number 2, it's the marketing. Number 3, it's the mentoring, and that's where I'm getting ready to sort of answer that question. And then number 4, and most importantly, as far as I'm concerned, it's the support that we provide all along the way. Because an advisor, if left to their own devices, they're doomed to fail. So you got to be able to give them the support they need every single step of the way. So with connectivity the way it is today, especially, it makes it very easy. But it's the mentoring that I want to talk about. Scott Garcia is one of the mentors on the platform. And prior to meeting Gary, which became providential, Scott calls me up one day and he goes, Carter, he goes, I've been doing this system in St. Louis, Missouri. We go way back. Man, I think we can do this system ourselves, but you got to find me a trust platform. You got to find me some way that we can be able to deliver this. So he sent me down this path originally is what happened. So he sort of had a foundational approach on how the process was, the overarching theme and how it should look. And then whenever I discovered Gary's software and the connectivity and how we needed the people as well as the processes, what ended up happening is that along the way, we just continually refined this process. So Scott Garcia had a lot to do with not only sending me down this path, but then ultimately helping me to develop certain things that could help teach and train and coach other advisors on how we would ultimately put it into their practice and help them grow through client acquisition, using estate planning or the estate plan portfolio as that foundational approach. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest obstacles you hit along the way?
Capital.
That's always the big one, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, it really was. I have all the most brilliant, amazing ideas, but I had to find the people to be able to do this. I had to have everybody have a vested interest in the success of the advisor, because what I really changed in this industry, combining estate and financial planning, is that for the longest time, and you sort of alluded to this, the hierarchy of power has been the attorney is really in charge. The advisor is somewhere sort of in the middle, probably outsourced it in the first place, and they're not really connected. And then the client is at the bottom with having really no control. We completely inverted the entire power structure. So now with our system, the client's in total complete control. The advisor quarterbacks the entire system, and with the team that we bring to him. And then the attorney is at the bottom where they basically do, some of the applicability and suitability review. And, for all intents and purposes, really almost rubber stamp the thing because we've done so much heavy lifting on the front end. So that was trying to find the team. That was sort of the biggest challenge, finding the right people. And I got to tell you, I say this all the time. A lot of providential things happened to me along the way. I couldn't have done this without, a higher power putting people in my life that I'm like, oh my goodness, they're a perfect fit right here. And then this person's perfect fit over here. Oh, and then I knew this person over here. And this is the part in the story where I say in these podcasts that I've done regularly, you'll read it all in the book one day.
Right. And you should, by the way, write a book. You've got a great story. What I've found is that as I grew my own business, I look back and said, okay, would I rather be good or lucky? At the end of the day, you can be really good, but if you're unlucky, you fail. What you have to do is be lucky and then be really, really good with that luck, right? That's kind of what makes it work. So that providence you're talking about is absolutely crucial. The reality is there are going to be things that come that can either kill you or create you that you've got to see and adapt to. But they're going to happen, and hopefully you can take that providence and just be able to run with it and do great things with it.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, probably the number one challenge that I did have early on, it's becoming less and less and less because of just how much credentialed the people are that we have on this system and everything. But a lot of the problem started with the advisor in the beginning, where they weren't sure they could really be in this area of expertise. And, there's this terminology called UPL, unauthorized practice of law, that they were deathly afraid of. And I got to be honest with you, the legal profession has done a phenomenal job. Our attorneys say this all the time. They're all millennials and they're younger and they're trying to disrupt that industry on their own, which is why they're all bought in. But, that is the area that the advisor's like, well, I'm not really sure. But the legal profession, they really have done a very good job of protecting their own, if you will. But it is now, especially in today's day and age, LegalZoom, ultimately, they sort of plowed a lot of ground early on for us to then come in behind them, because they've been taken to court to different states all over the United States. Like they have like 14, 16 different lawsuits that they were railed against, and then they ultimately came out, victors on each one of them. So, but here's what it really boils down to. It boils down to the access and the control that gave the legal profession is now being stripped away from them. And that's what this boils down to. And we literally give these end user clients, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, who know that they need to get this kind of work done. A lot of times we help demystify what estate planning really means, but they really know they need to get this done. And they fall in one of two categories. It's either one, they've done something in the past, but they have no idea what it is, how it works, who they need to talk to. If they did talk to somebody, they're deathly afraid because it was painful the first time, 8 years ago. There you go. Or the second category, which is typical, they've just been procrastinating on getting it done because the conventional wisdom is it's going to be painful.
Or all of the above. Yeah.
There you go. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. So all we wanted to do is we wanted to put the client in total control, give them the comfort and understanding that they're going to be connected to this team of specialists throughout their entire process and beyond. Even after we're done it's an ongoing flow. And that's why we call it, again, the 90-90 formula, because that other 10%, those changes are going to occur. We're going to be there. Our team of specialists are going to be there connected with it's almost like an instant messenger system where they're connected to our entire team that helped facilitate in the first place for the rest of their entire existence.
I had a great conversation the other day around what you need to do for real innovation. And a lot of people look at innovation in terms of what I call creeping incrementalism. How do we make things just a little bit better than our competitors? And the point that was made was, in reality, you need to be transformational to your competition. Real innovation means you've blown them away, right? And you can't do that with one thing. You have to do that with 5 or more different things. The example we talked about was Tesla. They didn't just come up with a battery-operated car. They actually came up with a completely different driving experience, a completely different service experience. They recreated the entire vehicle ownership experience. And that's what made Tesla Tesla. You've done a lot of the same things. You brought that mentality. What I'd love to get your perspective on is, what do you think are the most important things if someone's thinking about, hey, I've got an idea, I've seen something that doesn't work in the industry, I'm going to change the world. You've kind of done it in your space. What pieces of advice can you give?
Well, that's a great question. I gotta be honest with you. And I'll go back to this to let you know that I was always looking for it. So, I guess be open-minded would be the first thing that I would say to anything that might help you to get to where your great idea is going to ultimately get there. And the other thing I would say, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. Right. So, at the end of the day, honestly, it becomes a situation of resiliency. You're going to have days where it's like, you question yourself, you question, why am I even doing this? In fact, I've gotten to the point now where I have to continually remind my wife or business partners to remind me, hey, you asked for this. Don't forget, you asked for this, right? So, and I tell them, yeah. So, honestly, it's hard to answer that question really, really specifically. It's just some things just happen along the way. Just be willing to take it across the chin and, dust yourself off and, pull yourself back up by your bootstraps and be ready to continually do it. I use this word all the time now, but I was using this word way before it was even trendy, probably 15 years ago. Collaboration. You have to be able to collaborate with other like-minded individuals that can help you buy into whatever your vision is. And then somehow, and I've built my entire business model around strategic partnerships. So if everybody has a mutually beneficial arrangement that everybody's going to win, then you've got the making of whatever it is that you want to try to create, because you can't do it on your own. You're going to need some other people or technologies or work ethic or, brains, whatever the case may be. I mean, because I'm a phenomenal visionary and I'm a phenomenal talker, but I'm from Arkansas. I'm not really that smart, right? I mean, to keep it simple.
Cut yourself short now.
Yeah, to keep it simple, stupid theory. I'm a firm believer in that.
Awesome. Well, Carter, anything else you want to add before we wrap today?
No, I would just say that process is a key component to anything to be successful. Scalability, replication, that all involves really, process. So our best practices video that I created with Scott Garcia, ironically, it's called Best Practices, process. So I can't say that terminology, enough.
What's amazing is we talked a little bit before this, obviously, and you asked me what I did, and I'm an EOS implementer, and you said you've never heard of it, you've never read the book Traction. I have to tell you, you basically live the book Traction in terms of the discipline, the process, the thinking, the way you've got. I'm just kind of blown away, honestly, in terms of how well you're executing this business, and I can't thank you enough for sharing it with us.
Hey, it was absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me and letting me be a guest on here and everything. So anytime I can be a sounding board for anybody, they can go to my website, csifg.com. You can get on my calendar. I love conversating and sharing my story or vision or whatever, that if someone needs some inspiration or whatever the case may be.
Terrific. And I am absolutely going to, as a follow-up, this has inspired me to check your product out and hopefully update my estate planning as well, because I keep raising my hand in guilt, and I realize that I probably need to get off my butt and do it. So I will be back in touch on that too.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for having me today.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, bud.